Hey guys, Shay here and welcome back to another video. My last video, links in the description below, was a complete beginner's guide to masking in Vegas Pro. And this video will be a complete guide to masking in Premiere Pro. Today we're going to be going over how to actually create masks, as well as some other tips and tricks like feathering types, mask expansion, and how to actually animate them. So make sure to watch the whole video if you want to learn how to do all those things. So without any hesitation, let's get right into the video. Sweet, so hopping into Premiere Pro, I've got my clip already laid out on the track. So to start masking, just select your clip, head over to the Effects Control tab, and then head over to the Opacity section. Under the Opacity section, you're greeted with three tools: an ellipse tool, a rectangular tool, and a Bezier pen tool. While I recommend using the pen tool to create dynamic shapes, you can use the ellipse and rectangular tool to quickly create masks as well. These tools are used to actually create the mask shape. So let's start off with the most popular one, the Free Draw Bezier tool, or the pen tool. So to create your first mask, click the desired tool, in this case the pen tool, and now you're greeted with mask properties. But before you mess around with these properties, we actually first have to create the mask. To create the mask, head over to your preview window, and now you can see that your cursor is now a pen tool. This Bezier pen tool is very similar to that of After Effects, Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe Illustrator. So to start creating your mask points, simply draw a shape on your preview window. For this example, I'm just going to be roughly cutting out the car from our stock footage. Clicking on your preview window, as you can see, creates points that creates the shape of your mask. And once you join up all the points, your mask has been created. Now we can see that the car is selected from the background. This is an incredibly rough mask, so make sure in your guys' videos to create precise and clean masks to get a better effect. So once the mask is created, you can actually head over back to the Effects Controls panel under the Opacity section, and you can change the properties of the mask you've just created. So once you've created your final anchor point, you can see that the selection has taken effect, and your object that you have selected from your video has been singled out from the rest of the clip. If you hover over the mask, you have a hand tool that you can use to simply drag the mask to any position on your preview. So we've got 6 tools or properties that we can change. The first up is the mask feather. This property is particularly helpful when you've created a super rough and rigid mask like the one I have here. Simply by hitting the drop down menu and then increasing the slider value, you can see that the mask selection goes from extremely rigid to smooth. So now if we look at our mask before the feathering and after the feathering, we can see that we have a much cleaner effect. Next up, we have the mask opacity property. This simply helps control the overall opacity of just the selection. So unlike this opacity slider here that is responsible for controlling the opacity of the track and clip itself, this slider over here is responsible for controlling the opacity of just the mask. So decreasing the slider will obviously make it darker or more transparent, and increasing the slider's value will make it less transparent. The next property on our list is the mask expansion property. This can be extremely helpful if you've created a mask either too small or too big. This is a quick way of either simply decreasing the scale of your mask or increasing the scale of your mask. Simply by dragging it to the right, you can see that our mask actually gets bigger, and dragging it to the left, you can see that our mask gets smaller. The next masking tool is the inversion property. So before the checkbox is ticked, you can see that everything that has been selected is displayed, and then when we check the tick box, everything that is selected is hidden. But for the rest of the tutorial, I'm going to leave it unticked. So now if we watch our stock footage back, we can see that the car obviously moves out of the mask's frame. The mask is simply a static mask that does not move with the footage. This is where keyframing comes in. Simply head over to the points in your timeline where you've created your mask, then head over to the first property over here called Mask Path, and this is where the Mask Path property comes in. This Mask Path property over here allows you to create keyframes so that you can animate your mask and make it change in transform properties like position, scale, and rotation as your playhead scrubs through the timeline. So I'm heading over to the place where I first selected the mask, and then I'm going to hit the stopwatch icon to create our first keyframe. Then move a little bit further in your video, select the mask, and then move it to where the object is in your preview. We can see that Premiere Pro has created 2 keyframes where we place the mask, and if we watch that preview back, we can see that the mask actually moves with our object. However, this process can be extremely time consuming, especially if your object in your video is moving all over the place. But luckily for us, Premiere Pro has an extremely useful feature called tracking, which allows us to automatically create keyframes on our selected object without us even doing anything. To do this, head over to the place in your timeline where you want to start creating keyframes. Then hit the little settings icon next to the mask path property. Make sure it's on position, scale, and rotation, and make sure preview is also selected. After this, you can either start creating keyframes forward or create keyframes backwards. For this demonstration, I'm going to be creating keyframes forward in our timeline, so I'm going to head to this icon over here. So we can see that Premiere Pro automatically tracks our mask onto our object and creates keyframes for us. Depending on the intricacy of your mask, this process can take a lot of time. However, sometimes Premiere Pro isn't perfect, like this example over here, and what you can do is stop the actual tracking, adjust the mask again, and then click retrack. You may have to do this multiple times to allow Premiere Pro to create a much better effect. So now if we scrub through those hundreds of keyframes again, we can see that Premiere Pro has created a pretty good selection and has animated the motion properties of the mask automatically. And to stop masking, simply deselect the clip on your timeline. And here you have it, a pretty comprehensive guide to all the masking tools in Premiere Pro. If you guys enjoyed the video and learned something new, please make sure to like and subscribe and check out my socials, links in the description below. But up until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.
C'est dangereux sa mère, je vois que des pas au en fer. Le bécane crie et chante de l'enfer.